ready to go.
I'd like to call this work session Makers Assembly to order. We're going to be discussing the Ship Creek redevelopment plan, kind of a theme today. Let's start with introductions. Ms. Tucker, will you lead us off, please?
Julia Tucker, Assembly Council.
Amy Domboski, Assembly.
Ernie Hall.
Bill Evans.
Jennifer Johnston.
Dick Trainee.
Toby Gray Johnson.
Patrick Flynn.
Pete Peterson.
Carol Wong, Planning.
John Cecil, Planning.
Dwayne Adams, I'm with Earthscape, and I think I'm running this.
And who do we have on the phone, Mr. Adams? Who do we have on the
This is
phone?
Michael Stevenson with Clean Stubbins Consultants.
Greetings, Mr. Stevenson, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Got it. We're good.
All right. Mr. Adams, are you driving today?
Let me introduce very briefly. This was a project that began. Mr. Stevenson, who's on the line, and with Clean Stubbins, was in discussions with the mayor's office and others over a couple years, and from that it evolved the project you'll see presented today. It's been to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning Commission reviewed it once, found that it probably didn't fit the definition of a district plan as described in the comprehensive plan in Title 21, and thus it's being was presented again to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a framework plan, and that framework plan was approved unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's going to be on your agenda on Monday night. It's towards the end of the agenda. And while we did make a presentation to the Assembly back probably almost a year ago or 9 months ago or so, we did want to bring it forward again because there are new members who weren't familiar, and also introduce it as a framework plan as opposed to a district plan and move from there. And unless there's questions, I'll immediately turn it over to Michael Stevenson. And Michael, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I have to say that the audio on my end is very faint. It's quite hard for me to hear what you're saying on your end. I don't know if there's anything that can be done with the microphones, but I will try to listen as best I can.
We can hear you quite well, so you're doing fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Was that is that Chairman Flynn?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week at the Assembly meeting. I couldn't be there today, but I will be traveling this weekend. I'll be in Anchorage early next week. So, Dwayne, we're queued up with the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and go to slide 3. And I know quite a number of you we've met during this process. You've seen most of this, so this is really just sort of a refresh, and maybe for some new members there might be some new information, but I'll try not to linger too long. This is just some of our firm's experience, our team with Clean Stubbins. We're now part of Jacobs, a larger organization, and USKH. BGI was our real estate advisor, and Jones Lang LaSalle did the market research that drove the programmatic assumptions that that the master planning was built upon. Okay, next, Dwayne. We as consultants from out of town, I think it's fair to say our first impression of a hello, still there?
You're still here.
Okay. We were very much bowled over by the beauty of the landscape and Anchorage, the city's relationship to the water and the mountains, and that very much informed, I think, everything we wanted to do. And still to this day, that's very much what we find is unique about your city and the lifestyle, and we really try to make Ship Creek built around that and the unique aspects of Alaska and all the wonderful things that you have to offer, that it has to offer in Anchorage. We really looked, next, Dwayne, does this say the future of Ship Creek?
Yes.
of course, this is the view of basically the current condition. We really look at this planning exercise as a long-term prospect, not something just that might happen in 10 years, but over generations. Also understanding that the importance of Anchorage and Ship Creek, not only in the local economy, but the larger economy of the region and the state. And even thinking beyond that, really in the global economy, you being on the Pacific Rim, and in your unique geographical position, that all these things create the unique elements that feed into our thinking about Ship Creek. Okay, next, Dwayne. For most of the early part of 2013, we were engaged with a process of public meetings and stakeholder meetings to really learn as much as we could and to get input from a wide range of people and organizations and points of view, and resulting in us presenting 3 options, which we received a lot of great feedback on, which then informed a final master plan, which we came back with, that we ultimately took forward to Planning and Zoning Commission. Next. And part of our other research was looking at what other cities in high latitudes are doing in the Arctic and near Arctic region. And it's quite interesting, actually, that many of them are very aggressively investing in their waterfronts and turning waterfronts, which were formerly more industrial, into amenities for the city, for the residents, and also increasingly for visitors. Next, Dwayne. So thinking about the what's happening globally, what's happening in the polar region. I mean, you read a lot now in the papers about the increasing importance of the Arctic Council members and things that are happening in the Arctic with new shipping lanes, with communications, with natural resources. I think it's a fair assumption that that will increase in the coming century. So the role of Alaska, certainly in national affairs, but also international affairs, could very likely become even more prominent than in the present day. Next. So coming back to Ship Creek and Anchorage specifically, the role in the Alaskan economy cannot be overstated. The presence of the port, the functions of the port, the functions of the railroad. We quickly gained the understanding that those were things that Ship Creek had, the Ship Creek plan, whatever we did, have to maintain, and to the extent possible, even improve in terms of things such as truck movements, railroad operations, and certainly port functions. So we spent quite a bit of time with the railroad, had meetings with the railroad, had meetings with trucking industry, met with the port, and really used those as kind of as foundational elements in what would the Ship Creek plan would have to be designed around. Next. So rail operations, I mentioned, we have both the freight and the passenger rail. They each have their own specific requirements, and we did spend a lot of time with the railroad getting as good of understanding as we could. And Dwayne, needless to say, has worked with them for many, many years, and he brings a lot of experience, and he brought a lot of his own perspective on that. Next, the trucking. Much of the traffic is obviously coming from the port, then having to get onto regional highways, either the Seward Highway or going up the Fairbanks. And the movements through Ship Creek are in certain places quite difficult. There are pinch points. There are intersections that are problematic. And we learned a lot about that, and that gave rise to some solutions and improvements we thought could be made even with the development of Ship Creek becoming more of a mixed-use environment. Next. And then the pedestrian system, the wonderful parks, the trail system, the connections to downtown, to Government Hill, and needed improvements, and certainly probably number one, at least that rose to the top of the list, was the Tony Knowles Coastal Trail and the Ship Creek Trail, but the fact that they're not linked. So you have these wonderful trail systems, but then right here in the center of it, basically, there's not a clear connection. So we kind of put that high on our list of priorities as something to address in the planning. Okay, next. And then access to the water. And you have wonderful amenities, water amenities with the creek itself and Cook Inlet. And then you have the tidal flats. So it's challenging for the public to really get to the water's edge. That was something that struck us, again, as newcomers, that downtown and the water have this about a quarter-mile separation. And then Ship Creek itself, it has some access points, but we heard a lot about it would be nicer to have better access, more convenient access, and certainly for angling and just recreational uses, those improvements could be made. Okay, next. So we kind of latched onto this theme of, a beautiful city on a beautiful body of water, on the water, but not with a waterfront, and kind of comparing it to other cities of similar size and population. It seemed to be something that over time would certainly be a wonderful amenity for Anchorage to evolve, to have as a public amenity. So I'm going to go through a series of images next, Dwayne. So contrasting with the previous photograph, this was a rendering of the concept of expanding downtown out to the water's edge into Cook Inlet by building a new bulkhead and backfilling, and then creating new downtown real estate upon which mixed-use development could take place. Not only that, though, but creating a whole new network of green spaces, expanding the trail system, new parks, potential new facilities for boats, for ships, and connecting all of this to Ship Creek. Okay, next. So this plan is we call the Phase 3 plan, which is the long-range perspective, and we're going to back into what we call Phase 1, which would be the first stage of implementation, which would be the more near term. But this is the full build-out, the long term, and it does show the landfill element on Cook Inlet with you see the new blocks that expand downtown with a new park, then with a handicap accessible walkway that would lead people up and down the embankment over the tracks to Resolution Point, and that would connect with this waterfront esplanade around a freshwater marsh that could be fed from Ship Creek into the Ship Creek Trail network, and all the way up the Ship Creek Trail, and also connecting to the Tony Knowles Trail. This also includes incorporating a new transit rail facility next to the present Alaska Railroad passenger rail terminal, mixed-use development down in the Ship Creek Valley, and improvements along the Ship Creek bank all up and down the length of the redevelopment. Next, Dwayne. So this diagram shows the new pedestrian connections and expanded pedestrian connections that with the full build out would be included. I'm going to start on the lower left-hand side of the image. So coming north on the Tony Knowles Trail, one could continue on the current alignment up to a new pedestrian bridge crossing over at the northern end of F Street and taking people from downtown right down into the valley and connecting to the Ship Creek Trail. On the other, there will be an alternate route of taking the coastal trail around where we have the new landfill element and then looping back around and connecting at the same point. This also shows new elements of the Ship Creek Trail going on the other side of Ship Creek and improved pedestrian connections from Government Hill to downtown, and then linking these trails into planned bicycle trails that are already in the city planning future designs presently. Okay, next. An image of what a new point of arrival for cruise ships could be with the new. This is a view of that Esplanade element on the expanded waterfront with a lookout pavilion, so that people upon arrival could go up and get the 360 view of Cook Inlet and the mountains and the city. And then next, Dwayne. For every view, we looked at winter and summer and winter, because we've been there, I guess, in every season of the year now, and understand the extreme contrast of those two seasons, and the fact that this needs to be a 12-month-a-year environment and has to work. It can't just be something that's pleasant to be in the summer. Next. This is a view of what would be from the Resolution Point, looking out to Mount Susitna. This would be this handicap path that winds down and bridges over the railroad, and then further down to a new waterfront park. And the idea of that park would be it could have a sculptural element that would be fed from the tide, so as the water comes in, the water level rises and lowers. The three-dimensional forms of the sculpture would change and be something really, really fun for people to watch. That was just a concept that was studied. And then this shows a potential build-out of mixed-use developments. And the general massing idea was to keep it lower to the south when you get closer to Bootlegger's Cove with more residential, and then a little bit higher as you go north as you get more into the commercial areas. Okay, next. So this is what is in the plan now for Phase 1. And Phase 1 is really built around the core area of the Ship Creek Valley itself, where there's the largest parcel of land owned by the railroad that is currently not developed, so it is the least amount of encumbrances. It would be most readily available for development. And it also has a footprint where we could create a credible urban place with a mix of uses, with parking and with public spaces and streets, to create something that has an identity and is marketable. And then this also, Phase 1 would include this important pedestrian link, pedestrian bridge connecting F Street down to the core area of Ship Creek, and creek improvements and access improvements to Ship Creek, a bridge extending Ship Creek Avenue over the railroad track to a small dock with this lookout pavilion, which you saw in a previous image. But the whole idea here is, in phase one, to do two important things. One is to create a new neighborhood with an identity, and number two, to create this new connection from downtown to the waterfront. So even though it's a small part of the larger whole, you would, in the very early stages, create this, we think, very important connection to make it much more attractive and accessible to get right to the water. And then if you had the freshwater marsh park, that would make that even more of a attractive environment for people to walk out onto. Okay, next Wayne. So these are the key ideas of phase one to get the thing rolling. Build it around the trail system and really expand the recreational uses. I mean, clearly that's something that is unique about Ship Creek, adjacent to downtown, to have this wonderful natural amenity right in the midst of downtown, and that's really something you don't see in many cities. So we thought that's number one thing to build on. Create this mixed-use destination. One thing we heard, I think almost universally, that many people thought Anchorage needs more of are mixed-use neighborhoods, more walkable neighborhoods. So we thought we need to get that established in phase one. Something else from the development perspective, we wanted phase one to really be driven by private development. There is certainly a need for public investment in the infrastructure, there's no question, but we also believe that phase one really needs to have private investment come in quickly to help offset those public investments. In phase one, we also think getting this active waterfront, getting a toehold on the waterfront is really important. So connecting Ship Creek gives you is a big factor in that. We also try to locate building footprints to minimize disruption to the businesses who are there. I mean, these people have gone down and invested in already in Ship Creek, so the last thing we want to do is make their lives difficult. And in this phase, the commercial boat launch, which we heard from many people is important, and that remains in place. Okay, next, Wayne. These are just some numbers of ranges of from the market study for residential, office, and retail that Jones Lang LaSalle developed in hotel rooms. And we, for our development scenario in the plan, we chose we kind of split the difference, went kind of in the middle range between the high and the low here, just so kind of be a bit conservative on the build out. Okay, next. And I mentioned this idea of phase one, creating an urban place. This is a view of what we call Ship Creek Square. So you're down in Ship Creek, you're looking back at downtown, you can see the Hilton there. And what you're seeing in the center is this pedestrian bridge. And since downtown is about 60 feet higher than the bottom of the valley, you have to have stairs and elevator. But we thought we should make something make that something more than just a stair and elevator. So our idea was to make it a climbing wall. So you wrap the elevator and stair with this climbing wall, so it's a recreational use. And then you have this urban place with hotel, residential, office, and a market hall, which could be an all-season market hall, a conditioned space. This is the winter view, and then next way, the summer view. So we think with the proximity to downtown, with being right on Ship Creek on the trail, having this pedestrian connection, this could really be a great place. And if we create a great place, right away, that's how we get momentum and create a critical mass of activity. We think that's important to get things rolling. Okay, next, Wayne. Phase two then would be coming up across the tracks towards downtown and focusing more on 2nd Avenue and coming up the hill. The present beverage warehouse, we don't know the timetable, but we've heard they may be looking to relocate. That structure could become renovated, become something more, create more pedestrian activity. There are 2 small office footprints that have that could be create office space. Historic railroad shed has already been renovated and occupied. And then something we heard quite a bit about was that would be a great amenity would be an amphitheater. We've located it down on the eastern end of 2nd Avenue, so you create an anchor at that end of 2nd Avenue to drive foot traffic up and down that street. And then on the other side of the AC Couplet Bridge, we're suggesting a sculpture park, which would create a zigzag handicap path down the buttress through artwork and sculpture and make that a more fun way to walk up and down the hill. And then further to the west, again on the buttress on 3rd Avenue, a proposal for basically residential or multifamily redevelopment. We do understand, and we've heard quite a bit about the challenges of the seismic conditions there, subsurface conditions. And we do understand that will require quite a bit more study to find structural and economical solutions to make that work. But if there would be a way to do it to knit downtown, on the top of the hill with the bottom of the hill, it would be a very good thing to try to achieve. Okay, Dwayne, next.
That's $20 fine for
Phase 2, key points, redevelopment, 1st Avenue as a pedestrian main street. Incorporating the railroad, the multimodal center into new development, and creating these strengthening connections on Buttress Park up to the top and the bottom. Creating new destinations such as the amphitheater. Connecting the west end of downtown through new development on 3rd Avenue. And then, again, we're maintaining the boat launch in this phase. Okay, next Wayne. So this is the current view looking down the buttress just right next to the railroad passenger terminal. And the next one would be with the future build-out, the passenger terminals in the center, a new parking structure is just to the right that connects with the pedestrian bridge coming from E Street that spans over the tracks, and we go directly into this all-season market hall, and then new office development to the right. Now we'll point out off in the background you see these kind of 2 lit up pyramid forms. That's a concept for a new bridge that would connect Loop Road with Ingra Gamble. And this was actually in a previous transportation study, not by us, but we believe over time this would be an excellent solution to many of the trucking issues, because we get much of the trucks off of surface roads, get them up on Loop Road, over the tracks, over the creek, and connect directly to the Seward Highway and Parks Highway. So that would be a great thing that could be accomplished over time, and would reduce truck traffic in this new development, get it up and over, and would cut a lot of time for the truckers having to drive through downtown and go through traffic lights. Okay, next Wayne. And then this is a view as you're driving actually over the AC Couplet Bridge and looking down on the tracks and out towards Cook Inlet. This is the winter view, and the summer view next of the same from the same vantage point. Then next, this is a view coming down E Street to the bottom of the valley, and where it says coffee shop, that is the present warehouse. But if it were redeveloped, that facade could be opened up and become a retail frontage. So kind of creates a destination as you come down the hill, and then you see two new office buildings here that sort of buffer you from the railroad tracks, and they could also be lined with ground floor retail. So that starts to create a whole new atmosphere on First Avenue. In the center left, that is the current Alaska Railroad headquarters. Opposite that, we're suggesting it would be a great location for some sort of outdoor outfitter retail, right there on the creek, right in a great location, high visibility. And the next wing, and this is in the winter view of the same perspective. Okay, next please. And then phase 3, I think I talked about that enough. This would be the final build out with pushing out to the water's edge on Cook Inlet, but then everything gets knit together, and then you have a whole new downtown district at that point in time. Okay, next. So phase 3 summary, you really create you kind of redefine the image of Anchorage on Cook Inlet, creating entirely new real estate for long-term redevelopment, and also a new tourist destination, which in terms of thinking about tourists arriving, that first impression and when you get out and what kind of experience you have, and if you have the ability to get out of a train or get out of a ship and walk through this wonderful active environment, get right to downtown, it could be a great thing. And then really tying together the park and the trail system and creating a direct pedestrian connection from Resolution Park to Cook Inlet. Okay, next. So we try to boil it down. What are the key ideas? This idea of a new gateway to Alaska, arrival point, building upon the Alaskan lifestyle and access to outdoors. I mean, that's why many people want to be there. Enhancing the access in relation to the water. Expanding downtown and connecting to downtown. From our work around the country and even around the world, we believe strongly that the coming generations are increasingly choosing an urban lifestyle. I mean, these are trends, these are well documented, and we think it's going to continue. And so giving people those choices, those lifestyle choices and those amenities to be in these more urban environments, we believe smart cities that we're working with and that we're seeing, that's what they're planning for. So create a new type of neighborhood that you don't already have. We think that's what's going to attract investment and help grow the economy. Okay, next. So this is sort of the last image, is sort of a bird's eye view of hovering over Ship Creek, looking back out over the water, and just getting a sense of what a new type of neighborhood there could be like. And next. So that's it. I'll just leave you with that. And I know there may be questions, so I'll just open it to questions at this point.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, any questions from you? All right, I don't see any questions. Is there anything else you have for us today, Mr. Adams?
Nope. No, if you don't have a question.
All right. Well, with that, we're adjourned.